My name is Zhang, and I'm here to present something that my colleague Sonya Allin and I did together when we taught a machine learning course together at the University of Toronto, Mississauga this past academic year, which is to introduce a just-in-time prerequisite review for this machine learning course. So this talk is kind of an experience report, maybe more like an extended abstract, because we have lots of thoughts. We don't have a lot of results. And I'm really interested to hear about your thoughts and experiences, especially if you've done something similar, prerequisite review or stimulating recall of prior learning. It is an established educational practice, but I think the way that prerequisites are structured in a machine learning course is really different from, say, the prerequisite chain CS1 going into CS2, for example. And to be specific, here's the topics that we cover in this machine learning course. Many of our students consider this course to be challenging. There are lots of topics going into linear regression, classification, a little bit of neural networks in the first half of the course, then going into decision trees, naive Bayes, and then concluding with a little bit of unsupervised learning. But this course is important to give students a solid foundations in so that they can take future courses in deep learning, probabilistic graphical models, and graduate courses if they decide to go that route. And part of the reason why we think this course is challenging is because it has a lot of math and statistics prerequisites. And personally, I think what's really challenging about that is that many of these prerequisites aren't used until later on in the term, and it can be a little bit unpredictable. So for example, this arrow going from linear algebra to week 11. This is when we use spectral decomposition, which students don't remember when we get to that point in the course. As another example, this arrow here going from probability to week 10, or actually, there should be another line here going to Gaussian discriminant analysis. People haven't used Gaussian distributions and for a while, even if they had taken their statistics prerequisite the term before, it has already been a month since 2 months actually, since the end of that course. So it's hard to predict when we'll need what concepts. So to summarize, part of the reason why we think this course setup is challenging is that there are many math and statistics prerequisites. Students might have taken the prerequisite courses months or years ago, so they might not remember these concepts. And some of the concepts aren't used until later in the course. In the past, we provided resources at the start of the term to help students review the prerequisites. And the resources describe prerequisite concepts that we'll be using. Sometimes there are review questions that we provide for students so that they can self-assess to see if they're ready for this machine learning course. However, as an instructor, I still notice issues during lectures. So for example, many students just don't remember Bayes' rule, let's say, and we needed to review probability notations as it came up. So what does P mean? What does that vertical bar mean? And when students don't have that immediate recall of prerequisite knowledge, at best it hurts the flow of the lecture, and at worst they get lost at the beginning of the class and they can't recover. So what we tried this time was to position the prerequisite review before each lecture. So each week we identify 2 to 4 skills that students will need to understand and participate in that particular class. And for each skill, there was a multiple choice question that tests that skill. So again, students can self-assess. And if they can complete that question, great, they're ready. Otherwise, there is a corresponding short instructional video that illustrates that particular skill to support the students in that prerequisite review. So I'll explain these 2 pieces in the next couple of slides. So here is an example of a review question This one in particular reviews the idea of the partial derivative. And it also uses notation that we use in the course. So these questions, they were not intended to be onerous, but they are intended for the students to, again, be able to self-assess. Since the question uses the same notation as what we use in the course, we're hoping, and we think this is true, that students are a little bit less overwhelmed during class, especially if in the prerequisite courses, maybe they use a slightly different notation. And again, if the answers to the multiple choice question, if it's obvious to the student, then that's great. Otherwise, the instructional video is just one click away. So the students are not on their own in terms of finding the appropriate review resources. So the instructional video is designed specifically for the needs of this course. So they're generally between 3 to 10 minutes in length, and they all follow this particular format. So first, the video explains the notation used in the multiple choice question. Sometimes a little bit of help understanding the notation and understanding the question is all that a student might need. And then the video goes on to explain the concepts and definitions used in that question. So for example, what is a partial derivative? Again, this review might be enough for a student and they could be good to go. And finally, for students who need a little bit more support, there's a worked example going through the steps involved to solve a similar problem. Our intention is that students can skip parts of the video that they don't need so that the review is time efficient, but that if they do need the support, then the video, the resources are there for them. We didn't run experiments, so we don't have hard data. So we have anecdotal evidence at this point. And as instructors, we did notice fewer questions during lectures about these prerequisite concepts, and students seem to have followed the content better than in previous years. Though to be fair, we did make some other changes to the course this year as well. We heard from the students that they found the review useful. One student mentioned that in a survey that we did for an entirely different project, that they were reassured when they saw on the syllabus that we were doing prerequisite reviews at all, and not sort of just leaving them on their own. And another student mentioned that the videos actually saved them a lot of time because they didn't need to dig through past notes to find their own resources. So to reiterate, these are some of the points that we consider when we decided to implement this prerequisite review structure. We have identified that prerequisite recall was a problem for this course. We're not the only machine learning instructors to notice this issue. And this is a problem that has been discussed in the literature as well as one of the challenges that students face when learning machine learning. And we wanted the students to feel supported in reviewing the material. There was a really interesting discussion at 6E just this past I guess a couple months ago about prerequisites and responsibility and whose responsibility it should be to ensure that students have the right prerequisites, and how that's changed with COVID as well. So I think that in our particular context, a little bit of support goes a long way. Part of the reason we feel that we wanted to support the students is that this course is already kind of a heavy course at our institution. And it was our intuition that if we provide the resources to students, then that could save the students time in aggregate. So we would like to think of this as providing structure to something that students are already doing, or at least that they should be doing in order to understand the ideas, the concepts that are introduced in the course. But also if we're asking students to complete these questions, to do these prerequisite reviews, that could take time away from something else. And it does take quite a bit of time on the instructor side to create these resources, to identify the correct skills to capture, the prerequisite skills to capture, and that's time that could potentially be spent elsewhere as well. So these are some of the considerations that we try to keep in mind as we thought about the prerequisite review. So to summarize and to wrap up, even though prerequisite review is not really something new, I think the way we do it can depend on the course context, and that the optimal modality, timing, and level of support are important to consider for that particular course. In our particular context, which is in a machine learning course with a heavy workload, we try a way to do prerequisite review that's just in time, right before the lecture, and that provides support via video resources. So again, we haven't measured how effective this was. I think it's kind of hard to measure. So if you have experience measure effects like this, I would love to talk to you. And if you think this type of approach could help in your course, I'd love to talk to you as well. Thank you.
Would you like to come up, or do you want to just ask me and I'll repeat to the microphone?
I can come up there, yes.
Thanks, that's good. Yeah.
Oh, hi, Lisa. Thank you for that. I'd like to, I mean, I love that idea because I've had the same problem in my machine learning class. With regards to, obviously, it does take a lot of time to create these, very good resources for students to use. I wonder if there's any coordination that could happen between instructors from the prerequisite classes to provide some of that. I think that would be really helpful.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I am just starting that conversation as well. Just having the different courses talk to each other. Especially if there's an example that maybe the student had seen in that previous course to strengthen that connection. Thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Other question? Do you want to come up?
Are the resources, all the resources made available right at the work that are they really just in time?
So the question was, are all of the resources made available at the beginning of the course, or are they really just made available right just in time?
Oh, that's a great question. They were available just in time. And the reason is that we had to do the work of creating these resources, and those were just done just in time as well.
Oh, there's one on the chat. Can you see it?
Yes. I think it's Jacqueline. Jacqueline, did you want to read it, or did you want me to read it?
How about you read it?
All right. So do you suspect this could have any impact on completion rates, fewer students dropping or dropping earlier? That is what we hoped, and that's a part of the reason why we're really interested in this. And I unfortunately don't see an effect on the drop rate. Yeah, I really wish there were. So there's another question in the chat from Jack. How do the review videos compare to other methods of reviewing course prerequisites, such as written summaries or quizzes? That is a great question. We haven't tested other approaches. there were a few weeks where we could not provide the video resources, just for logistic reasons, and students were less happy during those weeks. So I think there is something about a video that is catered to their appropriate level, to this particular course, to the notation that is used in this specific course.
So how this method could be generalizable to other courses?
So the question is, how do you think this could be generalizable to other courses?
That's a great question. How would this be generalizable to other courses? I think this would generalize less well to prerequisite chains that are fairly linear. So going from CS1 to CS2, for example, you sort of need all the concept from CS1 going into CS2. But I think other courses with similar types of statistics and mathematical requirements, this could be helpful. So maybe more of the theory courses, algorithms courses that require a lot of analysis, where maybe certain mathematical content isn't used until later on in the course. There's a question in the chat. Do you think that tailored text could be as effective, or that videos are especially effective in some way? So I really liked videos because it allowed me to annotate on the screen as we broke down, let's say, the multiple choice question, especially in the first part. So reviewing the notation used in the question to just really go in and interact with the question text. I personally found that very valuable. And same thing with the worked example, showing a similar problem and breaking down that problem, looking at the notation, and even rephrasing some of the, translating some of the notation. I think the second step here, reviewing the concept and definitions, maybe those don't need to be done in a video, but I think steps 1 and 3, I found the video to be really helpful. So another question, Leo, for questions where many students struggle, could that topic be embedded in the primary lecture content to help shore up student knowledge beyond the video? Yeah, absolutely. And I think this then becomes a discussion of what is the optimal activity. So for some lectures, I think we did do that, where we had a little bit more review during that class, but that meant that something else will need to be taken out or moved elsewhere.
Yes. I was wondering what kind of model do you have in your class to begin with? Did you have a flipped classroom, and what were students saying about workload? Because now they have to spend up to half an hour of review alone.
So the question is, what kind of setup did you have for the class to begin with? Did you have a flipped classroom? And what did the students say about workload? Because this has an increased amount of time spent on review.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So yeah, workload was definitely a concern for us. And our class is set up in a kind of traditional way. We did not have a flipped classroom. We did have active learning with exercises during class, embedded between more traditional lectures, and labs as well, hands-on programming labs that were I guess in the first 2/3 of the course, and I didn't really get that much concern about the workload for this portion of the course. I think students generally understood that, hey, you need this in order to understand the lecture, and that this was intended to save them time. There were concerns about the relative difficulty of the prerequisite questions, that students didn't spend the same amount of time every week, that certain weeks the content was more challenging or that needed more review than other weeks. So this lack of balance was something that did come up.
Thank you. More questions? Okay, thanks. That was great.
Thank you.